directly into the camera.
Yeah, can you tell?
Creepy.
Look, it's on right now.
Oh, do you have it on?
I have it
No,
on.
you
Yeah,
just
I-
looked down.
Oh.
You just
What?
looked
No,
down.
so I'm not. So if I look down, like I'm not looking at the camera when it goes up. If you zoom in on me, you can see the colors of my eyes change.
It
when
just
it
makes
takes
you
over.
look mildly intoxicated.
Yeah.
Is what
Well,
it
like
makes
my
you look
eyes
like.
already don't open a lot, but when it works, like it looks like my eyes are huge, and then goes down. But it's
That's crazy.
hilarious.
All right, let's go. Bring up the crooked finger.
All right, here we go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Black Hills Information Security, talking about news. In this particular edition, we're going to be talking about big tech layoffs and how they're on everyone's mind. And I'm going to talk about old person stuff from around 2000. I probably have some other people that can help me out with that. And then we have some other stories we're probably not going to get to. Once we start talking about tech layoffs, we're probably going to be stuck on that for the whole show. But no, we got other stories in here that we're going to try to talk about. But let's jump straight into it because I think that sounds like fun. Have you guys noticed, I'm just kind of throwing this out there on Mastodon and Twitter, there is a lot of freaking out going on right now. A number of people have been laid off, and I kind of want to get your opinions on it. And I know a lot of you, like I was around the .com bust of 2000. I was in the recession is when we started Black Hills Information Security in 2008. We had COVID, so there's a lot of bad things that I've seen. And I want to talk about that and kind of some thought processes on things may be the same and things may be different. But I'd like to get you all's opinion on that first, because I think we have Microsoft is at 18,000, Amazon's at 18,000. Can't remember how many thousands of people Google's laying off.
12.
These aren't small organizations, right? These aren't small organizations that are hurting for money. They're just laying lots of people off. So let's go ahead and just anyone who wants to take it. I mean, we were all laughing about BSD Bandit's keyboards, and now it's just like a total crappy turd just got dropped in the middle of the conversation. But I think we need to talk about it and how we think it's going to impact the industry for the people that are listening, because that's what people want to know. All right.
I have two hot takes. So the first is
Hot
like with
take.
Microsoft specifically, that Microsoft, they hired 40,000 people in 2021 and they just laid off like a little over 10 or whatever.
Right,
So it's
yeah.
like overall their trend line is still like, I think more than anything for Microsoft, it was like their expected growth was way higher than, and then now they're like, oh, dial it back a little bit, guys.
Right.
That's Microsoft. With Google, it seems like they're getting rid of some old, like they're not getting rid of
Old
like
school
current
engineers,
hires.
people that were
Yeah,
there at the beginning. Yeah.
exactly.
I really.
Like,
I've got-
Has anyone heard if like it affected the Mandiant purchase at all? Like I haven't
Well,
heard anyone
so-
from Mandiant getting fired, but I.
So, yeah,
honestly don't know. That
but
was the first
addressing-
thing that hit me.
addressing Google specifically, like the thing that was newsworthy that just seemed to me like, I mean, I know I'm lucky to work for a company that isn't like this, but like they were like, after 16 years at Google, I was laid off. I think the corporation might see me as a faceless name that needs to be axed from the budget. I was like, yes, that is how companies see you. Like, it took you 16 years to realize that.
There
Like,
were
correct.
so many posts about that of just people having no clue about just getting laid off, and
Yeah.
I was pretty.
It's not a
surprised.
family.
I think
Yeah.
as us growing up in the recession and type of stuff, right, and coming of age, I've never thought of a company as a family. Like, never thought. I've always like thought of them as the necessary enemy that I do business with, and that I could be let go at any time. And
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I'm always ready to pull that
BHIS.
parachute and run away.
Wade on that point at BHIS. We do our Monday meetings, which I totally missed because I was teaching today. It was called the Family of Business Meetings because of Antisyphon and Active Countermeasures and all the companies that make up BHIS. And Eric and I hate the idea of calling a company a family. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, families have some really horrific characteristics, right? Like if you have an uncle that's just going to show up and just rip on people, like everyone just puts up with like crap. So we've actually changed it to tribe of businesses because a tribe will kick your ass out. So-
That's pretty good. That's good.
So
Yeah.
we try to switch that around. I mean, I believe in helping as many people out as we possibly can. But no, the family thing always makes me uncomfortable. And I remember I was at Accenture during their first round of layoffs, which I'll talk about in 99 and 2000. And I remember the project manager for Denver, that area, like was talking about how we're a family here at Anderson Consulting. And I'm thinking like, we're a company of like 50 to 70,000 people. We are not a family.
Right.
And
No, it's
pain is
Italian
not created
families.
equal.
It's
It is
Italian.
not. So I agree with that sentiment. I think that that's a good take. And I also think, Corey, your hot take is, if we're looking at the overall trend lines, they're up, right? So anybody else?
Yeah, I
Yeah, I think
got
Wade.
days.
I-
Somebody else go because I'm just angry.
Hey, Graybeard, Ian, you get to go last with me, sir.
Okay.
As well. And Bronwyn for sure. So, all right.
I went ahead and I was looking into it and seeing who is worried more than others. And it seems that those of us, because I was in the tech field during the 2000 bubble burst, I've been around through the recession. It seems that the people that weren't in it, that were in the boom times coming into the industry, are more concerned because they haven't gone through this before. Those of us that have sort of Wade's idea of, this is a means to an end. Where's the next thing? How can I make sure that I'm marketable for the next thing for when the other shoe drops? And that's something that does stick in the back of our minds. So I'm wondering if that isn't part of it. As far as the layoffs go, the trend overall seems weird. The question is I'm hearing about all these layoffs, but I personally have not seen how much of it is actual programmers versus security versus
admin
marketing.
Kind of breakdown.
Yeah.
I think it's-
What
that's
the
a
actual
good point.
breakdown is. So what areas are actually being let go?
There was some big engineers that left at Google specifically. I don't know much about people on the internet were joking that like Microsoft hired 40,000 people to fix all the bugs in Windows 11. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's true, but I think you need more than that. But yeah,
There
I
was
don't know. That's a good
there was an
question.
interesting one out there about an SRE engineer who got fired while he like right when he was handing off on call, and he still did his due diligence and like hit up the next line and was like, hey, you guys have a problem over here, but I just lost all accounts, so you guys are gonna have to figure it out, and then did it. That one was interesting. Another thing, do you think us as security people kind of take it differently than the overall market, right? For me, I'm always expecting the worst. That's just like my thought, like expect the worst, hope for the best,
That's what
expect
you're
for the
trained
worst,
and
right?
wired to do. Right?
Exactly. So I'm like,
Yeah.
people get fired. Like that's gonna happen. Like, but I don't know.
No,
You tell me.
No, that's how I feel too. I kind of always expect the worst. I came out of school in 2007, and in the first 10 years, I got laid off 3 times, and it's a horrible experience. I mean, one of them was company was going under. Another one was, they were reducing across the board. Another one was a shift in leadership, and things below that shifted as well. Never for anything bad, but they were big companies, small companies. It didn't really matter, if it was a big nameless organization. But seeing some of the severance packages and stuff that have come out of these big tech layoffs, at least I would have killed for severances like that.
Right? The Google severance is basically like, okay, you're going to be laid off in October, which is like, wait, I have to work until October? Oh, no, I don't. The other thing, like, but they did like incentives if you actually do complete your work because they know that everyone's going to get the email and then be like, okay, I'm going to go, skiing for 6 months or whatever. I'm like, as a security person, I'm like, I think everyone could use a severance package that lasts that long. Just recover from your burnout, like go and do something else for 6 months. Take up basket weaving, whatever it is. Like, go do something else. Reevaluate. I think in October it's going to be a different world, and I think they'll have a decent shot at something. But who knows?
I'm with Corey on this one though. There was a lot of expansion during the COVID time, and they hired a crap ton of people. And then now since the market's changed, they're like, well, maybe we don't need everybody. So I don't know. I think it's like a lot of people got hired in tech. Like tech was booming. Okay. I keep hearing the words record profit, but we're losing some people in that sector because they're like, well, maybe it's not going to continue to grow. I don't know. Right?
Yeah, people are like, tech betrayed us. We, the shareholders, were betrayed by tech. It's just a normal business now. We thought it was the gold. Which didn't this happen in 1999?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Hasn't this happened? It's like
happened
tech
over
has
and over
betrayed you.
again.
Yeah.
Tech, it's happened before. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bronwyn.
Oh, it happens over and over again. When it comes to people's expectations about technology, it's like they can be really critical and skeptical about other areas of business, but when it comes to technology, realism goes out the window, and they have these horribly unrealistic expectations. And
We're going to build an app for juicers, and it's going to be.
I want to give you all two takes. One take is going to make you feel better, and the next take is going to make you feel much, much, much worse. So I'm one of the graybeards that was around 2099, whenever that went down. And when that went down, there was this kind of cascading effect that I think we might be seeing now. And I want to kind of describe it. So whenever I started working at Accenture in 2000, I was hired into government and financials. And Accenture was broken down, Anderson Consulting was broken down into multiple different groups. And the two main groups were communications and high tech and government and financials. Communications and high tech was literally that. It was the .com companies, it was Silicon Valley, and money was everywhere, right? Like you would go to work on a communication high tech contract, and they were giving Palm Pilots out to everybody, and you would get personal notebook computers as a reward for just showing up to work 2 weeks straight on time. We had contracts at Accenture where they finished the contract and they literally flew the entire team to like Acapulco for like a weekend and their spouses. The money that they were making was just unheard of, right? And I was first hired and I was in a room of like 20 people, and everybody in that room went to communications and high tech. And I was put into government and financials, mainly because I was a poli-sci major and I knew nothing really about technology, and they just didn't know what to do with me. And that's where I went. And when I said I was going into government and financials, everyone looked at me like, I am sorry. I am so sorry. Like during the break, they were like, you don't get paid as much. Like they got paid more than I did by about 30 to 40%. You don't get bonuses. You don't do all of this. It's just, it really sucks to be in government financials. And I was actually kind of happy because I was looking at communications and high tech and basically thinking to myself, this is all garbage. Like everything that's going on with the amount of money that's going into it. People were talking about it as a bubble, like a year, like in 99, they were talking about the tech bubble. And when the bubble burst, and this is something that I think is really important for everyone to understand. This happened in 99, 2000. And this happened in 2008, and this happened in COVID. You get into this sort of, I don't want to say it's an echo chamber, but it gets into this chain where big company A lays off a whole bunch of people. And big company B feels like they have to lay off people because their board of directors are pointing at company A and saying, big company A just laid off like 10,000 people. What are we doing? And all the people in charge in big company B are like, well, we're going to lay off people too. And then big company C looks at that and they're like, well, crap, big company A and big company B are doing this. Well, we need to lay off people. And you saw that in 2000, and it was catastrophic. Like if you think what we're going through now is bad, you have no idea what 2000 was like. It was absolutely catastrophic. I remember sitting in the main offices at Accenture, and they were rolling in people in groups of 30, 40 and firing them in mass, just right out the door. Fired. Here's your severance package. Here's this, here's that. Get out, turn in your computer, turn in your badge, you're done. And it was horrific. I remember leaving the building in downtown Denver, and there would be people like literally sitting on the streets crying. And none of them knew why the hell they were fired. There was just a lot of, we are at 75% completion of this project and we were just laid off. Like, what the hell? And with that, I want you all to kind of understand that it was temporary. Okay. A lot of these firms like immediately turned around and work still needed to get done. So a lot of these executives who are morons and they have MBAs, they feel like because company A, B, C, and D are laying people off, that they need to lay people off as well to prove that they can lay people off, because the board of directors and investors want to make sure that they have that fortitude that they can do that. And they literally have no problem gambling with your existence as a human being. And I remember HP, Bronwyn, I think we were talking about this at one conference. I remember HP laid off like 10,000 people and they bought like 3 new Learjets at the exact same time for their executives. And those Learjets were like way more expensive than keeping those people employed. So there's a tremendous amount of theater to all of this, where executives feel the need to lay lots of people off to prove that they can lay lots of people off. And then they'll eventually turn around and they'll hire all those people back. So I'm hoping that you all feel better. So that's my point one. Corey, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, what was that supposed to be the good news?
Yeah.
That was the carrot. It literally is. It literally is the good news.
Am I going to have to go back?
That's the good news, everybody.
No, am I going to have to go work at In-N-Out again? Is that what you're
not
telling me?
personal. They're doing it just to prove that they can do it and to show everybody else that they can do it, because the stock market, like, go watch Jim Cramer, go watch CNBC, go watch these shows. And every damn one of these shows are talking about, well, Google definitely had the ability to tighten up their belts, and so did Microsoft, and their stock prices effing go up because of it.
Absolutely.
They literally burn people just to prove that they can cut costs, and then they get rewarded for it. That
the
is
stock
the good
market is up today. Yeah. So
the stock market is up.
Oh my god.
That's who got paid. That's who got paid.
They do not care about you. But like I said, everything still needs to get done. And I feel bad for Chris, because I had friends that got hit by the .com bust and they lost all of their retirement savings that they had in e-units or whatever, like stocks that a company was giving them. They lost all of those. Then they got into housing, and then they got burnt in 2008. And a whole bunch of them now got into crypto, and they got burnt by freaking crypto, right? Like, there's a whole, it might be triggering people at this point. But the point is, this is very temporary for a lot of these firms. And then here's the good news part of this. This tends to be something that resonates in Silicon Valley type companies. Google's, the VC startups, the people that have investors. If you look at the rest of the universe, they still have to do manufacturing. They still have to sell stuff. They still have to finish up ERPs. They still have to secure their stuff. And that comes to me in government and financials. All the people that I was in that room with when I joined at Accenture, every single one of them lost their jobs. Like, shortly, within a month of being hired. I stayed because the work still needs to get done. The work is still out there. And if you look at Silicon Valley, like even in the pen testing community, I've got pen testers that I've talked to at BHIS that are like, I can go to work for a Silicon Valley company and I can be making $100,000 more a year. And that's no BS, folks. It is absolutely true. Oh, excuse me. Was true. That all has changed, right? Now, if you're riding that dragon, right? If you're chasing that dragon and you're trying to make as much money, you absolutely can go work at Silicon Valley. You can go for a lot of these firms. You can go for the biggest buck that you possibly can. And that is amazing. You do stuff for those companies. And there's a video of a lady showing Google headquarters and how amazing it is. It's literally like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, right up into the point that you get sucked down a tube and like shot out the garbage chute someplace else. So that's the good news, right? This is being done just to show people that it can be done. They're just doing it. Like, don't you find it weird that all their numbers are really kind of in line with each other and who they're, the number of people that they're laying off? And they're going to come back and they're going to go through and they're going to hire people back. And I strongly encourage you, if you got burnt by this time, try to find a job in a stable company, right? Stay away from Silicon Valley. Stay away from those a-holes that are building on startups and VC funding. You get burnt there. You will make more money for the short term, but whenever it comes back around again, it absolutely burns you. And I apologize that I'm like co-opting all of this, but this is something that's been eating the hell out of me. So the other thing is the bad news. And this is what has been keeping me awake at night. There was testers that were like, why is John up at 4 a.m.? Here is the bad news. I feel like there is something different. I feel, and I want to get everyone's opinion on this. Amazon has built the vast majority of what Amazon needs to build to make money. Google has built the vast majority of what they need to make money. Microsoft has built the vast majority of what they need to make money. And the number of people that you need in a company to build something is about 2 to 3 times higher than the number of people that you need at a company to maintain something. And my fear is, and I haven't seen any evidence of this, because anytime you try to bet against the growth of tech, you're almost always wrong, right? There's always something else that needs to be built. But I do have a concern that a lot of the development that's happening right now is basically how exactly do we build better emojis? Like seriously, Apple was like, we now support these emojis. And that was like what they talked about at one of their big yearly releases.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about this, my concern is that for these companies, they have realized that they are no longer in a building phase. They are in a maintaining phase. And that does lead to layoffs. And that is the bad news that I would like to get everyone's opinion about.
What about the metaverse?
No.
That's having a rough time.
That's
as
a
well,
different
too,
episode.
so.
That's a different episode.
I think it's in line. We can come back to that. Let's come back to the metaverse and let's come back to Alexa, because I think those are important. Mike.
I do know, because I'd been in alt space, which Microsoft bought a few years ago when everything was going crazy with COVID and everything. They're shutting that completely down beginning of March. And from what I understand, they got rid of all their developers.
What is that again? What is?
That's virtual reality space. Meetings. DEF CON actually had a room there so you could actually watch talks. In-person chat. It was like the metaverse before the metaverse.
But Microsoft.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
but nowadays Microsoft, yeah.
So John, to go back to, or go ahead, Wade. So I don't want to.
I was gonna say, I think, I hope you're wrong, right? And I've argued with John on topics before. If you don't innovate, you're gonna die. And I think these companies kind of know that if they don't keep creating something, the new next thing, they're gonna die. Like if you look at the top 100 companies of 100 years ago, they're nowhere near the top companies now. Even 20 years ago, you look at the top companies, stuff flops over and over again. If you're not constantly creating, you are going to go under.
I want to
maybe that's what we're seeing.
I want to peel on that, and I don't want to disagree with Wade, because I think he's absolutely right. I think that, but I also go back to, you look back at the top companies even 50 to 25 years ago and how that's changed from now. The tendency for a lot of these organizations is to get stale. On the inside of the hoodies that you get from Facebook, they basically have something to the effect of Facebook needs to find the Facebook killer before it comes and kills them. Right? Yeah. Like Zuckerberg, as much as we want to make fun of him, he is absolutely 100% correct. He knows that companies come and go, and his whole thing on the metaverse is about that. But at the exact same time, large organizations suck at innovation. They are horrible at it. And if you look at Amazon created Alexa, and that was part of their innovation. And what they found out is people used it as a glorified clock radio.
That's my favorite
So
timer.
you don't need the engineers to do that. The metaverse is an absolute freaking dumpster fire, right? So I agree 110% with you, but I think that you're seeing a lot of large scale companies, they do not have the ability to innovate. So I think that this is the cycle. Maybe this is the washing, right? We take these large companies and ChatGPT replaces Google and something else maybe will replace Amazon, and you have these things, right? I agree with your sentiment, but I think that what a lot of these companies are now gun shy of is anything that looks like innovation. They're like, well, look what happened in the metaverse. Look at what happened with Alexa. Look at what happened with Microsoft and their virtual reality space. There's now going to be a very big reticence in these companies to do that and to try to innovate.
So my take is that the board and the shareholders and all these people, they can't live with the fact that Google could be one-upped, right? That's like they're going to be freaking out. Oh, you can't. This company's beating you at this. Like I'm sure every shareholder meeting, there's a whole section about Google getting questions about how come ChatGPT is better than you. What are you doing about that? You need to be on that. So I guess I think they're definitely still, like Wade said, they have to innovate or die. But the thing that scares me, and this is kind of in the back of my head, is like with the current culture of startups, which is basically you do a startup, you get to your 100 million valuation, then you sell to Google, right? As long as we keep doing that, Google doesn't have to innovate. All they have to do is sit on a bunch of cash, and they're just like, oh,
and
I have
much
enough
of this
cash.
do you think is Google and Microsoft realizing that that's a reality of the world today?
Well, that's what really scares me.
Yeah,
well, okay. If you look at history on a broader scale, Romans they didn't innovate. What they did was they perfect what other people innovated, and that's part of the reason why the empire grew so large. So, in a lot of ways, these large corporations are kind of like Rome. They don't have to innovate. All they have to do is buy the innovators and then pull it into their ecosystem. So that's part of the reason why Amazon is diversifying. I mean, you've got them going into pharmaceuticals. You've got them going into all of these different things. But then again, 100 years ago, Sears Roebuck was the be-all and end-all.
So barbarian.
Yeah, it basically
knock on our walls.
all it takes is one. Yeah, it takes one company that says we're not going to sell, whether it's ChatGPT or whoever it is. It takes one company that says no, we are going to knock down the Roman Empire. Good luck. Like that, then the companies are totally screwed because if they can't keep buying innovation, it's too late. So I think it is like the line that they play, where I think companies like Google or other companies that have much more of a appetite for innovation and the losses that are affiliated with innovation will probably keep, like John said, I think we'll get that kind of influx again, where it's like sometimes you just got to flush and get the new in. But I definitely think that's how Rome falls, right? Eventually, is they're like, okay, guys, we need some more tech to perfect. Anyone? And everyone's like, we're not going to sell to you. We know what you do.
EK Burger Picards. EK Burger Picards, I think, asked a question, and I want to have it posted. He said, "What kind of problems do we need innovations to solve? I look at CES and laugh at the crap that they are trying to push."
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's very true. That's solutionism, right? Creating solutions to problems that no one has.
Yeah.
But
I would argue at CES for the past 20 years, it's all been garbage. Not all,
3D
but like
TV is going to be cool.
3D TV.
3D phones. I still have one. It's
3D
You have a 3D phone? I didn't know there was 3D phones.
Yes, there was. You had to like squint your eyes. That was weird.
What were you going to say, Ian?
Well, no, I was going to say there's so much topics that were covered, and I have just a lot of anger about this. Like I could literally rant for a while, but literally the whole innovation. I agree with Wade, and I agree with all these points. But all you have to point to is IBM, and take IBM through the 70s and the 80s as the home PC revolution happened, when they were the named. I mean, it used to be the phrase was nobody gets fired for buying IBM. In that you can go try this cheaper vendor, but if it doesn't work out, you're fired because you could have just bought IBM, right? Now look at them today. They're a patent farm. Just like what Bronwyn has said about the Romans. They perfected those things. They'll take researchers and say, hey, I see you're working on a quantum thing. Want to come build it with us? We'll give you the money, and then we own the patent, but we'll give you the money, and then we can sell it. And that's literally where I think the Microsofts and the Amazons, at least in their technology areas, speaking of Amazon, are going. They don't care that they're innovating or not, because they know in the end there's precedent for this. They could be an IBM. Google, I think, is specifically going to go this way, because there is going to be a point where there isn't enough interns coming up with the next Gmail that nothing's impressive. Like nothing. Somebody's going to be able to Google search engine.
I mean, but at the same time, there's a lot of personal PC companies that are dead, and IBM's still a behemoth. So, like,
no, they're not.
I don't know.
Lenovo's a behemoth.
Yeah.
They sold
Lenovo.
I was about to say, there's like 3 Lenovo's in my house right now. There's not one IBM.
I got a couple sitting right over here.
I also think IBM has uniquely done a good job of monetizing some stuff that no one else can manage to monetize, like AI. They're actually like selling AI to hospitals. Like hospitals are like, we can't even afford ibuprofen because it's $800, but we'll buy this AI. So I mean, definitely
Tell
like
us how to save money on the
The AI will tell you don't have a headache. You don't have.
it's not just for pancakes recipes and timers. It's actually like they've made it into business cases. But
Can my dog eat that?
I do want to say the one angry thing that I really want to say about what'd you say, Bronwyn? No.
IBM
Bronwyn?
is still doing big iron, and that's totally different.
Well,
IBM
sort
is
of.
well,
They're
I
still
mean,
selling
they're-
AS400s, but when did those come out?
True. But their focus is on mainframes. It's on things that are supporting the big data engines, that are supporting the AI and this massive computational stuff that all of the cloud services require. That's a very different market than finding the next small widget that's going to be the front end to the big iron data at the back.
And I agree. And I think, honestly, if we're talking about IBM is not the same company it was in 99, 95, 96, 97. They just aren't.
no.
So
Um,
I mean,
wanna
look at
say the
look
one
at Apple
brand
though. That's the same example.
Yeah, true.
The thing
Yeah.
that drove me nuts,
Very
actually
different.
got me really, really mad when I saw these layoffs coming out last Friday, was the leadership. We are so tied to these short-term perspectives. Like was said at the top of this, all these companies had the cash to keep these
Mhm.
people around.
They're
And I'm
all
not
making
saying
record
that they
profit.
should have. Yeah, I'm not saying that they necessarily should have. Maybe there was good reasons to do this, but they had the cash to keep these people around, and it's a short-term concept. And then something else that John said about, these other companies do it. There's an MBA phrase that gets said all the time, and I've heard it from so many leaders, and I know immediately that they've got an MBA. They'll go, "What is our competition doing?" And the question when they ask that is, they're like, "Can we do it too? Because if they cut 12,000 people, we can cut 10,000, even if we don't need to, and we can get that quick return because we're not the only bad guy out there doing it."
Well, and that quick
Everybody-
return isn't based on anything that they're producing. The quick return is based on their stock value.
Yep.
Exactly.
Shareholders.
I
But
personally, I just want to call out Microsoft, because out of all the companies that I've ever seen, what was that quote? They're the only company I see that goes from failure to failure without loss of like momentum and exuberance, right? It's like, here's the Zune, it's a failure. Here's the Kin, it failed. Windows ME, total garbage. Windows 7, no one likes to talk about that. Microsoft Bob, Bill Gates got a wife out of that one. I mean, they just keep swinging for the fences. And
Clippy though.
Well, they did have.
Clippy.
They're getting wrecked right now in the news because they had the night before they announced the layoffs. They had a big fancy concert for executives to go rub elbows and do whatever they do.
Played.
So like it's just like
I
it's
bet
like
it was Maroon 5. They seem like such a Maroon.
no, it
5
was Sting. It was
The
Sting.
Sting. But where was it? Where was it?
It was in it was in Billionaire Land, wasn't it?
It was
Davos.
at Davos.
Oh
Yeah,
my
That's
god!
right. Yeah.
See, and I think that's the shit that drives me insane. And I think it's the same thing that makes Ian enraged. Is you see these companies and they're spending so much money on the executives, and it's just you keep coming back to it. It's like, well, we just bought a couple of Lear jets, but we laid off 10,000 people. We had to tighten our budgets. And Sting don't come cheap, y'all.
It's Sting.
You know what I mean?
Sound foolish.
The real thing
Anyone
that broke
sounds foolish.
The real
What was
thing
that again?
The real thing that drove me nuts. The Google employees at 4 something in the morning got an email. By the way, those Google employees, by the time they woke up, their access was already disabled. And many of them, the only way they found out that they had been fired was by going to their office and badging in. And if it was red, they were directed in another direction. And you had a bunch of sycophant morons jumping in saying, well, they got an email. What, they're supposed to check their email at 4 a.m. to find out if a big company
So,
released?
so
but
wait,
from
this
a
is a good thing. This
From
is
a
good thing.
security perspective, right? That
No.
was pretty impressive that they were able to do that to that many employees.
No, it's not, dude. I can lock out an entire domain in like 4 minutes. But
you
no.
can, but not successfully without locking
No.
everybody
So,
out, right?
This is a good thing, Ian, and here's why. It proves, for once and for all, let's get rid of the whole no. Most companies are terrible, but Google is different. Like, let's get rid of that. Companies are faceless graphs of shareholder prices. Like, we don't we can just get rid of that whole thing of like, well, here at Google things are different. It's like, really? 'Cause look at this. Look at this pile of garbage you have over here. Oh,
Look
we
at the
don't.
candy
That's,
land.
those are. We don't talk about that. No, come over here. You're a Googler. You can get free haircuts on site, free childcare. I don't care. You're gonna lay me off at 4 in the
Corey,
morning,
you
not
know
tell me
what,
what's going
Google's
on.
slogan?
The manner,
You know what
the
the
manner
Yeah,
in
what's the new
which
Google slogan? What's the new
organizations-
Google slogan?
Don't check your email. I don't know.
Once they got rid of "Don't be evil," it went down.
They
It
just
went
got rid of it.
downhill. Once
They
they
just
got
took
rid
it
of
away.
it.
Don't
They were
check
like,
your
we-
email. That's the new slogan.
Or
Chris,
Or
Chris, do you
don't
want to say
get got.
something? Go ahead, Chris.
the manner in which organizations lay people off is not unique to technology whatsoever. I'll tell another quick story from my own experience. I had an internship in college with a vinyl manufacturing company. I just building them a website, e-commerce, nothing fancy to it. They offered me a job. I said, now I'm going to do something else after I graduate. 3 months later, they shut down the plant. And they did so by waiting until all of the night shift workers left the gate, and then they locked the gate. And when the day shift people were about to walk in, they said, nope, we're shut down. No warning, no nothing, no severance. The company just closed its doors, and a few weeks later, they declared bankruptcy and shut down. Nobody knew what it was going to happen. And it was an impact to the community and to that area, but it's not unique how companies will just lock the gate and then wait for you to show up to find out. One company where I was laid off from, I was in touch personally with a small organization. I was hearing people getting laid off. Like, this is sub 25 person company. So people were on text chains. I just got let go. I just got let go. I happened to have a personal matter that I had to go deal with. And I wasn't coming into the office till about 11:30. And I knew I was going to be cut. So they waited till I showed up at 11:30, immediately pulled me in a room, and they said, all access is gone. The moment I walked in the door, they pressed the button, access was cut off and gone. So this is by no means unique to our industry, but it does show that these larger companies and even smaller ones, they're going to do what they think's best for them.
Well,
Nothing else.
And you do the same.
I wanna kind of
Everyone
throw
do the
that-
same. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to I think that there's a larger lesson to learn in the security community, right? You know, we have people all the time that are like, executives just don't get it on computer security. They don't take us seriously. They don't look at security risks the way that they need to. They don't put enough investment and funding into it. You're not special, Snowflake. Like, it's not because you're in security. It's not because they don't like you. It's not because you wear jeans and black t-shirts and have stickers that say, you know, I read your mom's email. That's literally the way that they look at absolutely everything. Everything is expendable. The only thing that matters, and Ian mentioned this, is the short-term stock value. That's it. If it doesn't help the short-term stock value, then they're not interested. It's very rare that you have a company that is like, we are going to invest long-term. And that's, once again, going back to, you know, Facebook, as much as Meta is a train wreck and Zuckerberg is a train wreck, I think it's interesting how he literally tells investors, he's like, I'm not doing what is in your best interests for the short term. I'm doing what I want to do. And Elon Musk is kind of similar. Once again, a total, complete dirtbag, but it's rare for companies to run that are listed on the stock exchange that are actually taking care of their people, that are actually looking at long-term growth and how they can sustain and how they can do these things, and aren't inviting Sting to Davos and then firing 10,000 people the next day. You know, it's just really, really frustrating, but that's the system we have with, you know, the stock market and the way stuff works. And it's not because you're security. It's, once again, it's not because you're a nerd. It's just because they don't freaking care.
Well, even the stuff that Chris said, and this is the thing that finally got me, and I'm not going to be angry anymore about this. I'm going to say this, though. You do not fire people by email, period. I'm such a huge believer that if you are going to go and ruin somebody's life, whether you're the frontline manager, whether you're the person who's there, whether you're the board that does this, you need to have a personal stake in this. You need to have the spine to look at them in the eye and say, I'm sorry, this is what's happening. Because that, on the times that's happened, and I've been on the other side of that, and the HR managers are basically crying because they've had to sit and fire like 200 people in a row like that. I remember them going, "This is a bad situation, but you at least looked me in the eye, let me know what was going on, etc." It's tech broke.
I agree with that, Ian, but I also kind of disagree with it, right? And the reason why I kind of disagree with it is I feel like a lot of times those HR managers, I feel really horrible for them.
Yeah.
Because the actual executives or the management usually isn't the one doing it. They let HR handle it.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting and watching, and it was in the back of the room when 20, 30 people were fired en masse. And the anger, and that person, that HR person who had nothing to do with the decision, was receiving all of that hatred. And that really bothered me. You know, that's something that I think stuck with me, and it still sticks
We're
with me.
not in disagreement, because in my
No, we're
mind,
not.
the
We're
right
not.
way to
We're
do
not.
that is that HR person's there, but you damn skippy, an officer of the company better be in that room to answer questions.
Agree with that point, 110%.
Yeah.
So
And
another
I
thing
don't
that
disagree with you, Ian, but I have one question for you, and this is coming from a security type aspect.
Sure,
You
yeah,
get
okay.
the 1,200, you get the 12,000 people into a room via video conference or what have not, because part of that is these lower levels managers and their directors and this whole division thing coming off. Who is going to actually escort 12,000 people, or even in the case of 1,200 people, off the campus to their desk to pick up their stuff and off campus?
That gets the logistics, and there is
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's that. Not that I agree with the way that they're doing it, but I could see that becoming a problem, and that being part of the reason why they do it
told
in a
me-
certain way.
If you told me that there was a and really there are only a couple, like Google, Apple, maybe a couple others, where you might have 12,000 people on a campus that you're firing and not shutting down the whole campus. And in that regard, yeah, no, there's going to have to be other. I'm not saying that it's a panacea to say you don't fire people by email, but you could go through and say, hey, this morning we're in one of those huge campuses. We're all going into the auditorium that holds all of us, because only those companies have those kind of things. And you're sitting down and there's an executive, and we're going to tell you what's going on, and we're going to do it one to many, or if you're remote, we're going to do it over a live stream. And then at that point, it's how that leader behaves. If you're, as was said in the chat, fake crying into a thing about how hard it was to do, or if you're being sincere about the realities of the business, and just like the whole pornography thing, I'll know it when I see it. All of us know when someone is sincere versus when they're not, when they're just being,
So,
you know,
I guess that comes to
it's-
like the root of the mass layoff, right? The word mass, right? Is you can solve the problem by how do you escort 12,000 people to their desk to get their stuff by simply not firing 12,000 people at one time.
Sure.
So is it a question of we need to actually cut 12,000 people in mass right now because we have a budget problem to save the company? Or is it we're cutting this many people because we're afraid when 200 of them start getting the word out to everybody that everybody's going to start pulling stuff from our systems?
Well, so
It's
it-
about
worried about
making the statements.
It shows how little they care, is what it shows, because this is a problem that can be solved by people like Ian that can think this through, and any of us can workshop it, but they don't care. They think so little of their employees' future preferences, and they don't realize they're burning the bridge. They just say, nope, got to axe 12,000 people. All right, cat star, sort randomly. There you go, done. So I think it shows how little they care, that they don't want to try to solve the problem of how to fire them without burning the bridge of. And what big tech doesn't realize is they just burned the bridge behind them. And there's a lot of people that are developers for these companies or other security people that are going to leave and are not going to want to come back to big tech, and are going to say, if I'm coming back to big tech, you're going to have to write a big check, because I want to work for a company that cares about me as a human being, or at least can pretend like they do, versus being mass laid off at 4 a.m., right?
But here's the other problem with the mass layoffs, and this sucks because I've been in the room when these conversations have happened. Whenever you're in big tech and you get laid off, once again, this is not what people want to hear right now. There is an assumption that there was a stacked ranking. And they went through and they basically stacked all of their people. And they said, these are the most important people. These are the Midland people. And then this lower 10%, these are the people that we can get rid of. And there's always an assumption whenever you're talking about resumes or people that were part of these mass layoffs. There's like a scarlet letter that follows them. where you were laid off in this Google layoff. So therefore, you clearly weren't that important to Google. Like somebody already evaluated you and they found that you were the bottom 25%. You were the bottom 10%. You were the bottom 5%. So why would I want to hire you? And that is like, that's one of the things where Chris was talking about. How about we don't lay off people in 12,000, 10,000 batches? Because I have seen people that have been working for these companies. They work really, really, really hard for these companies. They get laid off like this and they can't get another job in a large company because it's forever tied to them that they were laid off. And the assumption is Google, Microsoft, and Amazon made a determination, did a stacked analysis, and found this person to be on the bottom of the barrel.
And that's not fair.
Bothers me.
It's not true. That's not true.
It's not fair and it's not true.
How many times it's last in, last out? Or last in, first out?
Be.
I mean, if you're
but,
the last one hired.
But no, I've been in the room with executives and they're like, well, yeah, they're risky. They were laid out. They were, what is it? What was the name of that company? It was Webvan. They were a Webvan employee and that whole company went down in flames. They probably were responsible for that. Like, I've seen this. And what I can't get my head around is you see like these line techs who get burnt this way. And I have seen people that literally had to leave the IT industry completely and go into selling cars or something like that because they can't get back to the industry. And the executives that started those companies, burnt those companies or ran those divisions and burnt those divisions, end up getting hired again at another company.
Oh yeah, a CEO can put on their resume. Again. Yeah, I laid off 12,000 people. I'm great. Hire me. I'm great. I'm your guy. Yeah.
But you know what some executives see when they see that? Well, that's Bill. He's one of the people that's willing to make the hard call if it's needed.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the other thing is just crazy is like if the company knew you were worthless, they would not wait to mass lay you off. They would have laid you off already. Like that isn't a thing. They're not like, oh, we have to lay people off. Let's go find all the useless employees. No, they're doing that constantly. They cut the chaff as they go.
Well, it's kind of that same stigma with the security side of it, of when you have people saying, don't hire people that came from breached companies because they were a problem.
So pisses me off.
If you don't hire people that have breach experience, nobody's going to have experience.
Right. Well, so let's look at companies like Target. Let's look at companies like Equifax. Let's look at LastPass, whatever. You know, a lot of those people, I remember Jake Williams and I, we were doing a panel discussion and that came up. And it's like that person that was on that IR for Target, you want that person. That person has experienced something that very few people have ever experienced. And that's amazing. But once again, it oftentimes becomes a stigma. I remember after the Target thing, Mike Poor, myself, and I can't remember who else. I don't think Ed Scotus was there. But we took out a huge number of the Target security team. I was out at a conference in DC and we took them out to dinner and like, it was a very hard dinner, right? Because they knew that they needed to somehow get away from Target. They knew that they had to find other jobs and they were having a really hard time of it because literally people were saying, I'm sorry, I don't think I can justify to management hiring someone that worked security at a company that failed. And you know what? It wasn't their fault. Like they had the exact same problems every other company has. Management not wanting to invest, not wanting to do the right thing in computer security, fighting with administrators who don't want to patch and update things, not having proper like offshoring alert detection. And it was a very weird, it's very strange to be at a Korean barbecue with large speakers blasting K-pop and you're in a back room with a whole bunch of people that are crying. And it's just, like I said, this whole entire thing just sucks and it really, really bothers me. And I wish I could hire all of them, but I can't.
We'll rename this Stories of Inspiration by John Stewart.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Can someone play K-pop so our audience can cry to John's music? I'm just kidding.
I swear, if you played K-pop right now, I probably would cry. I don't know. It just makes me mad because as an owner of a company, I know what it's like to be afraid. I know what it's like to look at the future and be like right now, BHIS, we're totally looking at what's going on. And we're like, is this gonna hit us? Inbound sales call volume is good. It's Q1, which is always interesting, but you always worry about this, but that just the fact that there's groups of people that just unilaterally fire people to prove to the stockholders, the board of directors, that they can do it, and they ruin that many lives in mass. I just don't know how the hell they sleep at night.
So wait, did I miss the invite to Davos? Because or was that for like senior testers?
I texted you. You didn't get it.
Seniors.
Oh no, I didn't. I didn't get
John,
it. John must have gone on his own and just hung out with Sting.
Yeah, it was a good time.
What you just said, because the hypocrisy that's killed me about all that is the same people that are like, oh, well, we got to make the tough calls. Will be the same people on investor calls complain, well, these people are just quiet quitting on us and just showing up and doing the bare minimum. Like,
pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, you destroy the trust of the labor force over, quarters and quarters and decades, and now you're getting this result. It's shocking.
Why aren't they giving us 2 weeks? I don't understand. Right?
Yeah, it should be the opposite. It should be. We got to flip it to the opposite. The executives who cause these should have the scarlet letter, and the employees who are caught up in it should have the golden letter. That's just as simple as it is.
I can't remember the executive, and I'm not going to call him out. But I remember Eric and we were talking about one of the companies we did a test for, and they entered into bankruptcy, and it was like we still get packets like this from lawyers because the company owes us money, not like a lot of money. I think it was like a $15,000 contract. We're never going to get paid, but this is like 6 years ago, and we still get lawyer things, and it's just constant, right? And we were like, what is the deal with the CEO that did this? Because that company still exists, and they now have new management. But I was talking with them because they came back and they wanted to hire BHIS again. And they were like, look, things are tough, but we got brand new management and all of this. But I found out when talking with the team that the guy that was the CEO had like this disastrous track record of company after company after company that failed financially and almost the exact same way. Like it was just again and again and again. And now he's still at another company, right? With like a compensation package of like 5.2 million a year. And I'm just like, what in the hell? Like
it's scamming. It's
happen?
Scamming. It's scamming. It's the same thing of like, how are credit cards still getting stolen after all these years? Like there are scammers that come up with the most elaborate things. They're like, no, see, this one's different. See, your credit card at a gas station, it actually reads it from the dollar bill somehow because your fingerprint, like it's a scammer. It's just a CEO level scammer. That's all it is.
But I think it's like a club. And once you're in, you're a G, right? Like, oh, well, he was a CEO of another company. How did that company do?
Okay. Everyone did see that the CEO of the Fire Festival got out of prison and is starting a new music festival.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
Why is that in the news?
Absolutely true.
Oh.
Like pirate party or something like that.
So anyway, John, where do we get our tickets? Because I assume the whole company's going, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I just don't
sleep in one of those beautiful schools.
I don't understand this. I just don't get it. Like,
where can I invest?
It goes back to like when it's like the whole breach memory thing. Like, oh, they got breached. All right, tomorrow. Let me just type my credit card into this website. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure they fixed it. Like, the next day, we're already using it.
I think the Elizabeth Holmes thing is probably explains it more than just about anything, because I've sat and I've had dinners with people that consistently fail, and they have MDAs from very prestigious schools, and oh my God, the confidence that these people have it's like literally you can scrape it off the wall when they're in. I don't know if you saw The Glass Onion, Edward Norton's character, where he's like, we're all a bunch of disruptors. They literally have that kind of energy. Like they're wise. They know what they're doing. They're absolutely confident in everything. We had one guy that I worked with, I'm not going to say where, but he had failed at every single management position that he was put in this organization, just consistently every single time. But anytime you had a meeting with him, you were just like, this guy's a genius. This is amazing. Like, he's so confident in everything, but he was wrong in absolutely everything. But he was so confident. And I think that's probably the Elizabeth Holmes thing. Well, she seems like she knows what she's talking about.
She couldn't just be lying to our faces. Who would do that?
Yeah, and a lot of that isn't just lying. It's lying in such a way that it's telling you something that you want to believe. right?
It's social engineering.
Not to go too
It's
political,
pure and
but
simple social
This sound-
engineering.
George
Yeah,
Santos.
it is.
That's what his name. What's the
I knew that was
congressman
going to
who
come
got-
up. I knew that was gonna come up.
What I love about him is he transcends politics. Like now Republicans and Democrats are like, that guy's a turd. Like everyone hates him. But once again, it's that Frank Abagnale thing. It's, I don't know who kept saying social engineering. I think they nailed it. These guys are great social engineers. They just do it again and again and again.
Well, John,
It
I
is-
think.
yeah, it's great.
All right, go ahead.
No, I was just saying. Yeah, I was just.
Yeah, well, I think the motivation is different when you say you got executives that they'll do a terrible job and they'll go to another company and they'll do a terrible job. Like their career and even down to their salary negotiations, everything for compensation is totally different from people who are doing the low level work, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of executives, their motivation is I have an employment contract for 3 to 5 years. If I make it to 3 years,
You're
by
out.
cutting costs, I get $20 million of a bonus or something ridiculous. I've never seen an executive contract, so I don't know. But my salary year over year as a low-level person hoping to get a bonus at the end of the year or something is a completely different way of going about things, right? My job is to stay at a company and have returning income over and over. Theirs is to hit their 3 to 5 goal and move
Yes,
on.
it is. Yes, it is, Chris. No, I'm joking. God, I shouldn't be messing with them. Shouldn't be messing with anybody. But I see the same bullshit. I see the same bullshit in the InfoSec thought leader space. And I'm just gonna say it, right? Because I know a lot of people I'm not a thought leader. I'm kind of at a phase where I probably am in that category. But there's a lot of conferences that I go to, and I'll be sitting around talking with the other people that are presenting, and they'll bring up compensation for presenting at these cons. And I'm sitting at the corner and they're all like, yeah, well, my minimum is $10,000 or $5,000. There's one guy and he was like, if I'm going to keynote, it's $25,000 for me to keynote. And then they get to me and I'm like, I just asked them to buy me a plane ticket and a hotel room. Am I doing this wrong?
You're the meme. You're a living incarnation of the meme. You're all getting
They're all
paid.
like, it's like I farted at the table. And they're like, oh, that guy.
I think that shows that, but it shows the whole sucking of capitalism, right? That you're there for the community, less for the clout and the money, right?
Even the sucking of capitalism thing, Wade. I don't think that people understand just how paranoid we are at Black Hills Information, specifically Erica and myself, because we talk about that. We have shirts that say that, and the people that are on this call that are BHIS employees, they know how much money is in the BHIS checking account. That's something we share with everybody. And we constantly have this fear that BHIS is going to F up, right? Something weird's going to happen, whatever. And then a whole generation of people will be like, well, look at BHIS. They proudly sucked at capitalism and look at how well it worked for them, and we don't want to be that cautionary tale. We really, really, really don't.
Yeah,
I will this say is becoming psychotherapy for me as the owner of a company.
I do think there is. I do think this is a corollary in a lot of ways. But one of the oldest pieces of advice is in any industry is don't attach your wagon. Don't sell your name too soon, or really at all. And I think that's if you're an influencer or something like that, and you start to attach your name to we've seen it with now people are suing crypto startup people that did ads because they're like, well, you said I was going to get rich and I didn't, so I'm suing you. I think it genuinely does pay dividends long term to not go oh, I'm going to attach, oh, you pay me X and I'll speak at your conference, or you do, whatever. If you give me enough money, I'll say anything you want. Just send me the script. I think that those people get burned out of advertising or whatever it is. Eventually it all goes down the tubes. And I think that's true with companies too. If you, I don't know. I could be wrong.
Dude, I've been on stage. I was invited to present and co-present with somebody, with another company. And I'm on stage, and I can't remember. It wasn't RSA because the only people that I co-presented was Paul and Kevin Johnson. But I was on stage, and I'm co-presenting with this person, And like right in the middle of the presentation, he starts talking about how their product is best in breed, and how he starts ripping on their competition, and I'm dying inside, right? Like, you don't know how horrible that is when you have somebody that literally is just starting to talk about their product, right? And they're talking about, it's becoming a sales pitch, and you're on it. And the way that I can kind of articulate this is, who's the guy that was it Michael Bay? Who was the guy that did the Pearl Harbor movie? The director?
It was Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Was it Michael
Michael
Bay?
Bay.
I think so.
There's a video where Michael Bay is at a conference and he's on stage with a CEO of I think a television company. I want to say it's Samsung. And he goes on stage and he's supposed to talk about how awesome these particular displays are and all this stuff. And he just literally just says, F it, and just walks off the stage. He's like, I can't do this. And I felt that way, right? But it goes back to, you start to see people that start to sell themselves out, or you start to see people that start selling their employees out. And it gets into like the question in the sequel to Wall Street. Like, what is your number? Like, seriously, how much money is enough money for you to where you can be a decent human being? And it's just so hard, because I think for a lot of these people, the number is just more. That's all that matters. And we got to find a way where we can wash these people out and try to shut this shit down, because this is toxic, because like it hurt these like 30,000-40,000 people.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt the companies in the long term, because who the hell is going to want to work for like a Google or a Microsoft or an Amazon whenever you're worried, like, is this just a short-term gig? That matters in the long run. It absolutely does.
Your story reminds me of something, and I'm trying to remember the context, but it was at a Hollywood party, and a novelist was talking to somebody, and basically the upshot was that the novelist was happy, not constantly churning out more and more and more and more and more, because he said, I have something that the person throwing this party will never have. I have enough.
Right.
And that's what I think is the core that drives the insanity of this endless pursuit of the profit, is that there's no such thing as enough.
Yep.
And that is also one of the big separations between those of us who aren't executives, who we're looking at a quality of life. We're looking at enjoying having enough, and we're not addicted to more.
Yep. And
I would.
Oh, go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say, I would highly recommend that thought. I was actually talking to CJ about it the other day. There was a short story by Leo Tolstoy called How Much Land Does a Man Need? And I read it in high school, and it stuck with me forever. And the TLDR in it is, this guy has an opportunity to get all this farmland, but he has to walk the perimeter of it in a day. And as he's walking, he's like, oh, that would be a nice spot to grow these things. So I'll walk a little further out, and I'll walk a little further out. And he's like, oh, that'd be a nice spot for this. And it's more and more, and it's not enough. And then he realizes that the sun is setting, and if he doesn't get back, he loses everything. So he starts sprinting, and he gets to the top of the hill and has a heart attack and dies. And the end of the story is about 6 feet. That's what you need to be enough.
Oh
and
my
that's
God.
Like, yeah.
That is just so quintessential Russian.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a great story, because I mean, it does speak to that. It's if you're constantly looking at all this other stuff and saying, I gotta have more, I gotta sustain constant growth beyond everything, you're gonna start making bad decisions.
Well, and you know what? It becomes peer pressure. And it becomes peer pressure in the purest sense, right? Like I've been in the industry and I've been around a lot of companies that have gone IPO. I've been involved with a lot of companies that I've had friends that worked at that have gone and got VC funding. And the thing that sucks is I always go back to the TV show Silicon Valley, where the guy raises, I think it's like $25 million in VC funding. And he's so excited, and there's a party, and everyone's like high-fiving him, slapping him on the back. But the growth wasn't what you needed for a company that had $25 million, and he was basically ejected from the company. And there's a scene where he's like at a diner and he's lost everything. And one of the people says, you know, you could have taken like $10 million, which would have been enough for you to do what you needed to do. And the expectations on revenue growth would have been less. And you just had to accept less money. And he looks at his friend and he's like, wait, I could have accepted less money? That was an option? Like in his head, it was just this mind-blowing thing that he could have taken a step back, got what he needed, and been successful rather than trying to pull down as much as he possibly could. And he ultimately failed because of it. So it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, 6 feet. Boy, that's harsh. All right, everybody. So with that, thank you so much. Like I said, we weren't going to get into any stories. I think that's a big deal. I don't think we made anyone feel better. I think that we made a lot of people. I'll just tell you, this too shall pass. Just keep at it. Education. Do what you can. Take some time, because if you go to interviews and you're tweaky, people pick up on that. Relax, find your balance, come back out into it. And my heart's with all of you. So hang in there, folks. All right, let's shut it down. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye, all.